the night porter and the ghostly children. My brother had always been the calm, unshakable type. As a night porter at an old 18th century hotel tucked away in the quiet northern English countryside, he thought he'd seen it all: late night check-ins, rowdy wedding guests, and the occasional strange noise in the empty halls. But one particular night would forever leave a mark on him. It was a cold, windy evening, the kind where the wind howls through the cracks of old windows, and the dim glow of the reception desk was the only light breaking the hotel's eerie silence. Around 2 a.m., the lobby was empty, and my brother sat behind the desk, sipping a hot cup of tea, when the sound of hurried footsteps broke the stillness. A woman appeared, pale as a ghost, clutching a suitcase in one trembling hand. Her eyes darted nervously around the room as she approached him. She looked like she had seen something no one should ever see. "I need to leave," she said in a shaky voice. "I can't stay here another second." Concerned, my brother stood up and asked if she was all right. The woman hesitated, her hands trembling as she set the suitcase down. I couldn't sleep," she stammered. "All night, I kept hearing children laughing, running up and down the hallway outside my room. But when I opened the door to check, there was no one there. At first, I thought maybe it was just my imagination, but then," she paused, her face tightening as if recalling something too dreadful to say out loud. "Then what?" my brother prompted gently. The woman's voice dropped to a whisper. "A child entered my room. He was holding a candle, and he just stood at the foot of my bed, staring at me. I told him to leave, but he wouldn't move. I turned on the light, and he vanished. Just gone." The hairs on my brother's neck stood on end, but he tried to stay professional. He reassured her that he'd look into it, offered her a cup of tea, and arranged for her to leave first thing in the morning. Still, she refused to return to her room and sat in the lobby until the first rays of sunlight lit the countryside. The next morning, curious and unsettled, my brother brought up the incident with his manager. He expected a dismissive laugh or some logical explanation for the strange occurrence. Instead, his manager simply nodded, almost too casually, as if this was nothing out of the ordinary. "That happens from time to time," the manager said, pouring himself a coffee. "You see, before this place became a hotel, it was a school and kindergarten over a century ago. Guests often hear children laughing or see a child wandering the halls at night. We've had people leave in the middle of the night more times than I can count." My brother felt a chill run down his spine as the realization sank in. What the woman described wasn't just a one-off occurrence, it was a haunting. Even now, he tells this story with a mix of wonder and unease. He's long since left the hotel, but the memory of that night lingers like a ghostly presence in his mind. As for the woman who fled into the night, she never returned, and my brother couldn't blame her. After all, some places carry echoes of the past that refuse to fade, no matter how many years pass. It was a cold, stormy night when I moved into my new apartment. The building was old, a relic of the past with creaking floorboards and long, dim hallways. But the rent was cheap, and I was desperate to find a place to stay after moving to the city for work. The first night I settled and was uneventful. I unpacked a few boxes, set up my bed, and tried to ignore the strange sounds of the building settling around me. Around midnight, I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard it, a loud knock at the door. I froze. Who could be knocking at this hour? My heart began to race. I got out of bed and crept toward the door. I looked through the peephole, but there was no one in sight. My hand trembled as I slowly opened the door to check the hallway. Empty. I sighed, convinced it was just a random noise, maybe from the building or even the wind. I shut the door and went back to bed, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my chest. But then it happened again. Another knock, this time louder, more insistent. I quickly got up, heart pounding. Again, I checked the peephole. Nothing. My mind raced. Was someone playing a prank on me? Or worse, was I being watched? The third time, the knock was softer, almost like a whisper. But this time, it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from the window. I froze, my blood running cold. The curtains were drawn, and I was certain I hadn't heard anything outside. I cautiously walked toward the window and pulled back the curtain. What I saw made my stomach drop. There, pressed against the glass, was a face, pale, gaunt, and staring directly at me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The face stayed there for what felt like an eternity, and then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished. The knocking stopped. I slammed the curtain shut and backed away, trembling. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I couldn't bring myself to answer it. I just stood there, too scared to move, wondering if I had imagined it all. But I knew deep down, I hadn't. And that night, I didn't sleep a wink. The knock at midnight had been real, and whatever had been outside my window was still out there, watching, waiting. The next morning, I packed my things and left. I didn't care about the lease or the rent. Some things aren't worth staying for. I never went back to that apartment. And to this day, I still hear knocks at midnight. I just don't answer anymore.